Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of The Battening. On today's show, we're going to watch a flat earth educational video to see if we can learn anything. So take off the tinfoil hats, because we're using logic. Enjoy! That music. We're gonna learn something today.
Water, when unmanipulated, is to find its level. So whether you look at a cup of water, a bathtub, a swimming pool, a lake, or the ocean, it's flat.
Wait, dude, you're showing water in a cup, water in a bathtub, and water in a swimming pool, and comparing their relative flatness to the fucking ocean. And again, for the 1000th fucking time, you are not going to see a curve from standing on the surface of the planet. You are essentially part of the surface of the planet. No matter what direction you look, the horizon will always be the same distance away, making you feel that what you're looking at is flat. It is your perspective. This is an image that I saw in another video, and I'm pretty sure that this is what you're trying to show in your video. It perfectly demonstrates how flat earthers don't understand gravity. This picture in particular is just silly. The top picture says that gravity is always level, but then the pic showing how water stays level on a sphere is apparently wrong. The Earth's center of gravity doesn't change, therefore the water is level and spread evenly across the surface as it should be. This next picture shows the Earth conforming to gravity, but apparently the water isn't affected by gravity. That picture just shows water defying gravity. All that water would rush toward the closest point to the center of the Earth. It would not rise above the fucking planet like this picture is trying to say.
We have 0 authentic pictures of the Earth and they're all composites.
No, that's a lie. Here's one right here. It is true that there aren't a lot of them, and the reason is cost. It is astronomically cheaper to do a composite image than it is to send a camera halfway to the fucking moon.
And NASA even admits that they Photoshop Earth images.
It is Photoshopped, but it's has to be.
Right, NASA uses multiple photos to create a composite image. This is far cheaper and allows them to capture a lot more detail of the surface. But of course you've taken "it is photoshopped" out of context because you want to believe that he's saying the picture is basically an artist's rendition, though in fact he's talking about the stitching of multiple photos.
On numerous occasions, NASA admits that we can't go beyond low Earth orbit, which is between 99 miles and 1200 miles away. The interesting thing is that the moon is said to be 238,000 miles away, which is a difference of 236,800 miles.
Your math skills are unprecedented. There are a few reasons NASA isn't currently leaving low Earth orbit. I'll cover the two biggest reasons. Number one is cost. For what we've learned from past trips to the moon, the cost for another manned mission does not really justify the knowledge that we would gain. Number two, the Van Allen belt. This is the big one. This is an area of radiation that starts about 600 miles off the Earth's surface. NASA was concerned about this, but after a while they realized that the risk of sending astronauts through the Van Allen belt wasn't enough to cancel the trip to the moon. So they took a path that bypassed the strongest parts of the belt, and after returning home it was found that the astronauts had not been exposed to any more energy than an atomic bomb commission worker receives in about a year. But that's still too much to continually send people past the low Earth orbit. Couple that with the cost versus value, and that's why NASA does not leave low Earth orbit. And what does this have to do with the Earth being flat? Wouldn't this just contribute to the moon landing conspiracy? It really doesn't prove anything about the world being flat. Stick to one conspiracy, please.
No matter if you're on the ground, on top of a building, a mountain, a hot air balloon, an airplane, or looking at high-altitude amateur balloon footage, the horizon never fails to rise right to your eyes.
Okay, I don't exactly understand what your point is here. The Earth is fucking huge. Why would the horizon staying eye level mean anything? If anything, this helps the globe model. If the Earth were flat, you would see much, much further than just a few miles, and this is something that you guys are completely inconsistent on, as per usual. I know that you guys like to talk about the vanishing point and how you can only see so far, but based on the flat Earth videos that I've seen, that vanishing point changes significantly from photo to photo that you guys are trying to prove. Sometimes it's a few miles, sometimes it's a few dozen miles, sometimes it's 50 miles. Whatever suits your case.
Whether you are looking at Toronto's skyline from Niagara-on-the-Lake, 31 miles away, Chicago's skyline from Union Pier, 43 miles away, or even Oahu from Kauai, which is up to 108 miles away from center to center, or 73 miles away from the closest points, you will not see any curvature where it's supposed to be. According to the Pythagorean theorem, which states that the curvature of the Earth is 8 inches per mile squared, Oahu should not be visible whatsoever, but you can see the whole thing.
Okay, so you're missing or ignoring a lot of variables here. First, do you notice anything similar about these three photos? Anything at all? Besides spelling Niagara wrong, does anything strike you? Perhaps that none of them are over land. They're all over water, and not only that, but the atmospheric condition seems pretty wet and foggy and dense. Now, one thing that we learned back in grade school is that light bends, specifically when going through something like water or fog. If any of these were taken on a dry, sunny day or over land, we would see something completely different. Now let's look at your Toronto pic. Now compare your photo to a clear close-up photo of the same skyline. Notice how we are only seeing the tops of the buildings. We're missing quite a bit. If you look closely, you can see that the shorter buildings are cut off completely. Look at the gap right here, and notice how much we're missing. The entire Rogers Center is completely cut off. The tops of the buildings are visible because the light is being bent just enough to see it on the other side of the lake. So while you brought this as evidence for the Earth being flat, you simply showed us evidence of the Earth being spherical.
In 1887, Albert Michelson and Edward Morley conducted what's known as the Michelson-Morley experiment. This experiment was attempting to prove the speculated motion of the Earth around the Sun.
Oh, how dare you misrepresent one of the biggest scientific experiments ever. No, the Michelson-Morley experiment wasn't created to detect the motion of the Earth around the Sun. It was an experiment to detect the luminiferous ether. Scientists thought that since waves need a medium to travel through, like sound waves through air, and with light having wave characteristics, there must be an invisible force or wind in space that light travels through. Like dropping a pebble into a stream, the ripple waves against the current would be slower than the waves moving with the current. When this experiment occurred, light was split into opposite directions and was found to be the exact same speed. Tell us what happened next.
And when it failed, Albert Einstein was forced to form the theory of relativity to overcome this problem.
No! He was not forced to invent special relativity because the experiment failed. When the Michelson-Morley experiment failed, physicists wanted to know why it failed. If something fails, scientists don't just give up and conclude that the world is flat. They continue working until they figure out the solution. Special relativity wasn't designed specifically to explain the failure of the Michelson-Morley experiment 18 years prior. Special relativity was proposed, and the failure of the Michelson-Morley experiment helped confirm special relativity. The bias in the words that you flat earthers use is so transparent.
In fact,
I also want to point out that you have theory highlighted here as if to undermine the theory of special relativity. So I'm guessing you probably don't know what a scientific theory is. It's not a guess. I'll bring you up to speed on the definition now. A scientific theory is a well-substantiated explanation of some aspect of the natural world, based on a body of facts that have been repeatedly confirmed through observation and experiment. Such fact-supported theories are not guesses, but reliable accounts of the real world. Motherfucker.
Anytime mainstream science is faced with undesirable results, they create a workaround, which isn't real science at all.
No, let's ignore what you just said because you seem to think that special relativity was invented by Einstein in order to explain Earth's movement around the sun, which isn't even what the Michelson-Morley experiment was for. But let's look at this handy quote from Edwin Hubble that you threw in there and don't explain. Now you take a few different quotes and you stitch them together, I guess due to your dishonesty, but let's take a look at the first part of that quote in its full context. Now I do warn you that I'm probably a boring reader, so if you want, just simply pause this video, read this page, and fast forward a minute. Okay, so this is in relation to redshifted stars. The energy corrections, it will be recalled, are the total effects of redshifts on apparent luminosities, provided redshifts are not velocity shifts. The latter interpretation seems to follow directly with the preliminary assumption of uniformity. The assumption of uniformity has much to be said in its favor. If the distribution were not uniform, it would either increase with distance or decrease, but we do not expect to find a distribution in which the density increases with distance symmetrically in all directions. Such a condition would imply that we occupy a unique position in the universe, analogous in a sense to the ancient conception of a central Earth. The hypothesis cannot be disproved but is unwelcome and would be accepted only as the last resort in order to save the phenomena. Therefore, we disregard this possibility and consider the alternative, namely a distribution which thins out with distance. A thinning out would be readily explained in either of two ways. The first is space absorption. If the nebulae were seen through a tenuous haze, they would fade away faster than they could be accounted for by distance and redshifts alone, and the distribution, even even if it were uniform, would appear to thin out. The second explanation is a supersystem of nebula isolated in a larger world, with our own nebula somewhere near the center. In this case, the real distribution would thin out after all proper corrections had been applied. Now, what this is implying is that we must be the center of the universe because everything is moving away from us. Now, the easiest way to think about this is that the space between the galaxies is expanding, not necessarily that everything expanded from where we are specifically. No matter where you are in the universe, it will seem like you are the center of the universe. Here's a good example of this. Each one of these white dots is a galaxy. Now let's fast forward in time and these are the same galaxies. The most notable difference being the space between the galaxies has expanded. So let's take a look at the first set. Pick any galaxy, line it up with the same galaxy from the future, and you see that from their perspective, everything seems to be uniformly moving away from them, and that galaxy must be the center. Pick any galaxy and you can see the same thing. Try reading the book that you're quoting and reading the work of others in the same field if you want a better understanding of this. Also, I'd like to point out just how ironic it is that flat earthers claim that scientists are all lying to us and they are part of the conspiracy, yet they turn around and constantly use quotes and actual work from these scientists as evidence for their claim. You cannot say that these scientists are all lying to us, then turn around and use one of their quotes to support your argument and expect us to take you seriously.
The sun is claimed to be 93 million miles away, with a radius of over 400,000 miles.
Optical illusion. Damn, the sun's about the size of a beach ball.
But can easily be proven to be much closer and smaller by tracing the crepuscular rays back to its origin in the sky. If the sun were indeed 93 million miles away, it would simply be impossible to have angled sun rays, as they should all consistently come in straight.
Okay, so I've actually finished this whole episode as of talking right now. For this piece, I actually wrote out a long little piece on the perspective of which you're looking at these rays of light, and I felt pretty good about it until last night I found a channel I hadn't seen before called Cosmic Skeptic, and I saw that he had done this exact same video. So I checked out his version, and I loved his way of talking about this point in particular, and he gave a much better example than I gave in my example. So I got a hold of him, and with his permission, here is the clip from his video.
Now this is all completely to do with perspective. Look at this picture of a road. This road is completely straight. The lines on either side of the road are parallel to each other and running in a straight line into the distance. But from our perspective, it appears as though they're getting closer and closer together, forming some kind of triangle to a singular point in the distance. And this is exactly the same thing that's happening with the sun. The light rays are coming in straight lines parallel to each other, or perceivably parallel given how far away the sun is. But because of our perspective, and because they're coming towards us, it appears as though they're diverging.
Thanks to Cosmic Skeptic for the use of that clip. If you haven't seen his channel, I definitely recommend it. You can find his channel down below.
According to the globular theory, a lunar eclipse occurs when the sun, earth, and moon are in a direct line. But it is on record that since about the 15th century, over 50 eclipses have occurred while both the sun and moon are visible above the horizon. F.H. Cook, The Terrestrial Plane.
Okay, do you have any actual evidence, or are we just gonna go along with this quotes and lack of understanding nonsense? Number one, you're quoting a con man from over a century ago. You might as well quote L. Ron Hubbard while you're at it. Number two, what is it with you throwing all of these softball, misrepresented, easy to debunk arguments at us? What's being talked about in this quote is actually two completely different things. A total lunar eclipse happens when the sun, the earth, and the moon line up, and the moon passes through Earth's shadow, and we call it a total lunar eclipse. That's one thing that this quote is trying to talk about, and then the other thing that's completely separate is called a selenelion. This is a partial eclipse, not a full total lunar eclipse. This is an eclipse where you can see the moon and the sun at the same time from where you're at. While the moon sets to your right, the sun would be rising to your left, or vice versa, depending on where you're looking. This is something that's extremely rare, and you have to be in the right place on Earth at the right time to notice it. Now, if the Earth didn't have an atmosphere, you wouldn't see this. What happens is, again, light refraction. Every day, the sun rises earlier than outside the atmosphere and sets later than outside the atmosphere because the atmosphere acts as a lens. It bends light. The selenelion phenomena uses the same principle. What I'd love to hear is how the flat Earth would account for this. You don't seem to cover that, though. So I'm gonna just brush that one under the rug, I guess.
It's a common misconception that the shadow of the Earth causes moon phases.
No, nobody thinks that. Nobody says that. Nobody with any ounce of credibility has ever thought that. So, no. The moon is a sphere rotating around the Earth, being illuminated on one side by, you know, this thing. right here.
Even the pastors and priests of the science religion readily admit this fact.
Is that supposed to be a joke? No, there's no astrophysicist who thinks that the moon's phases come from the shadow of the Earth. But I'm glad that you showed video of him saying this. There's no video. There's no video? Oh, shocking.
The interesting thing about moon phases is that they are always the exact same 8 phases repeated. But if we were circling around the sun, these 8 phases would inevitably be reversed from the summer to winter seasons.
The fuck is this? Did a kindergartner make this? Why are all of these different? They should be the same. Phases are caused by the moon's position around the Earth. The light source does not change locations. This is the only one on here that is right. Well, in this one. Like, how the hell is the backside of the moon illuminated? Is there some kind of galactic mirror? I guess you probably wouldn't rule that out. I mean, the light source is right here. Why is this side of the moon in the shade? And I honestly have no idea what this is supposed to mean. Why would the lunar phases change from summer to winter? Do you think that the moon orbits the sun? I mean, that's the only thing that I could think of. For someone who just said that others don't know how phases work, I'll explain it to you since you don't know how phases work. The sun is to the left, the Earth is the big blue ball, the red dot is the observer, and the moon is the gray one. I'll even show you what the observer sees in the upper left-hand corner. Like that. See how generous I am? Now watch how the illuminated side of the moon is always facing the light source. God, I shouldn't have to say this. It does not change directions, but the observer sees the shadow move across the moon as the moon rotates around the Earth. This causes the different phases. Get it?
I completely understand that the idea of a flattened stationary Earth seems ridiculous in many ways, but that's only because we are taught the false globe model from the very first time that we enter a school classroom.
Yeah, they probably teach that because the globe model has real evidence. It has empirical data, it has photos. The flat Earth hypothesis is nothing more than a bunch of confused people on the internet who believe what they see only when it supports their preconceived conclusion.
Not to mention the first time we are introduced to the concept of a flat Earth, it's depicted as a highly laughable world.
Well, you could say highly laughable. I would say physically impossible, but you know, whatever.
I do get it, but it's all part of the deception.
How did you know?
I've spent 30 years of my life believing that we were on a spinning globe. It wasn't until I unbiasedly and scientifically investigated
Oh, that's fucking fun. I can't do it. I can't do any more of this video. Oh my god. Alright. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed. That was fun to do. If you liked it, subscribe, watch some more videos, like it, do whatever. I'll be back in a few days with another video. Until then, enjoy.